The Final Fantasy series has been a major part of gaming since 1987, basically popularising the JRPG and cementing it as a genre in gaming in and of itself. It has spawned countless spin-offs and sequels in its 31 years, and one of those is the Dissidia series. Originally appearing on the PSP, Dissidia Final Fantasy and its prequel, 012 Duodecim, were fighting game RPG hybrids, one-on-one battles using a unique system of bravery attacks which increased your bravery by depleting your opponents, and HP attacks, which use your accumulated bravery to deal direct HP damage to your opponent. In 2015, an arcade game was released in Japan developed by Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja and published by Square Enix. It features 3-on-3 battles, and now a PlayStation 4 version has arrived in the West, with new features only seen in the home release. So without further ado, let's get into it. Just like any other fighting game, you get a flashy opening before the title screen. As we've come to expect from a Square game, it's unsurprisingly pretty, flashy, and like the gameplay is reminiscent of the final battle in the Final Fantasy VII Advent Children film. This makes sense really, as the game was originally conceived as a way to make that fight essentially playable because it was so cool. Upon starting the game, you're greeted by a Moogle, who serves as your guide throughout the game, and you're asked to choose at random a starting summon to use in combat. As you play, you unlock more until you have the full set, although you can only use one at a time in battle. There's an in-depth tutorial for newcomers and returning players alike, although for the most part, if you've played either of the previous games, you'll be in comfortable territory here. We'll start with the story mode, which unfortunately I wasn't allowed to get any footage of, so you'll just have to take my word for it. As with most fighting games, the story mode feels like something of an afterthought, more so even than the past games. From a format perspective, it's more like Duodecim than the first game, in that rather than going through each character's story, it groups characters together and progresses chronologically and simultaneously. To progress through the story, you need to earn a type of currency called Memoria, which is only used to progress the story and is earned by increasing your player level. The quickest way to do this is to play the Gauntlet mode, which I'll get more into later. Having to constantly jump between the story mode and this other mode feels like a strange restriction and kills the pacing of the story somewhat. Speaking of the story itself, it follows similar beats to the original games. Heroes and villains from each numbered Final Fantasy are brought to another world to fight each other, this time to generate energy created by battle that this world thrives on so it doesn't destroy itself. But while being given this brief by the god of this world, Materia, another god called Spiritus appears and the heroes set off to defeat him. It's fan-fiction quality at best as a premise for bringing all these otherwise unrelated characters together. However, the dialogue for each character is spot on to their personalities in their respective games, which is very satisfying for fans. You don't necessarily need knowledge of the previous games or characters to understand this one, but it helps immensely. Additionally, the voice actors from the previous Dissidia games and other Final Fantasy games return, keeping things consistent for fans of the series. Now, the draw of any fighting game, the gameplay. You have bravery attacks and HP attacks, which I explained earlier, as well as skill sets you choose before the fight starts, and a unique skill different for each character. Certain characters have attributes reminiscent of aspects of their original games, like Bartz's job mastery, and his fighting style being that of a mimic, using attacks from other characters to create his own unique fighting style. You can also block, dodge, dash, and swap lock-on between each of your three opponents. Blue lines trailing from opponents to you, similar to those found in Final Fantasies 11, 12, and 14, denote which opponents are targeting you, and from which direction. The controls will be familiar to those who have played the previous games and feel comfortable and natural to use, and characters that appeared in previous games have near identical movesets, so players of the old games will be right at home picking up their favourite character. There are two different types of battle: a regular mode, where the first team to manage 3 KOs wins, and core battles, where teams fight to destroy the other team's core crystal. You'll likely spend most of your time doing regular fights. Surrounding your team's lives bar are the two teams' summon meters, which when full allows your team to perform a grand summon. These are huge, look insanely cool, and can deal huge bravery damage to your opponents provided they hit. It's rare to play a match and not see at least one summon. The fighting itself feels like the older games, although with the introduction of the dash meter, more grounded and limited. For example, in the old games, you could have 3 HP attacks per character tied to a direction of the left stick and a push of square. Now, however, you can only bring 1 HP attack into combat, so it's best to choose the one that fits your playstyle best once you've unlocked more. The 3-on-3 fights can seem hectic on first, but not unmanageable, and it does get easier to determine what's going on the more you play. At first I thought 3-on-3 would be less fun than the 1-on-1s of the prior games, but in reality they're quite fun. They help the game feel like an old 3-person party from the PlayStation 1 Final Fantasies. Unfortunately though, I have had instances where it feels quite unfair, because you're being targeted by all 3 opponents and your allies aren't helping very much. The arenas are quite large to accommodate 6 fighters, but it does mean you can spend a lot of time chasing other fighters around to get close enough to attack, which can be incredibly annoying. I should also mention I've lost more than one match due to the AI not being able to hold its own. The more you play, however, the better your AI get at fighting as they gain levels and ranks. Speaking of which, as you play you'll level up your player level, and the character level of the characters in your party. Increasing your character's level earns you new HP attacks and chat lines, mainly used in online battles. Increasing player level earns new skills to add to your skill sets, memoria to unlock new chapters of the story, and treasure. Treasure is this game's idea of those annoying loot crates that have been prevalent in video games recently. Opening a treasure will give you 3 cosmetic style items like skins for your characters, new music to listen to during combat, and player icons. There's also a shop to buy specific items with money you earn from playing if you don't want to rely on the lords of RNG. You earn treasure from leveling up and achieving certain scores in the arcade mode like Gauntlet mode, which also happens to be the fastest way to level up your character and player levels. Gauntlet mode takes the form of 6 individual battles that get progressively harder with each round, although you are given a selection to choose from that range in difficulty, so if you're still getting used to things you can choose a silver or gold level fight, but if you're feeling a little more confident you can go for a mithril or platinum level fight. Be warned though, the harder difficulties really are that hard, in all caps to really emphasise it. There are also story trials, which you unlock as you progress through the story. These are near identical to the regular Gauntlet mode, but limited to characters from the different sections of the story. At first they seem much easier, but by completing them the first time you'll unlock a hard version. From a presentation perspective, Dissidia Final Fantasy NT is gorgeous. The graphics are, unsurprisingly if you're familiar with Square Enix, just absolutely breathtaking, especially while in motion. The UI isn't as cluttered as you'd expect a game like this to be, giving you plenty of space to see the arena and giving you all the information you need without being intrusive. The music that plays during combat are remixes of classic Final Fantasy battle themes, and more can be unlocked with treasure and through the shop, including the original versions of the songs as they appeared in their respective games. During combat, the Moogle that guides you through the menus at the beginning will yell out combat advice. This can be useful at first as it reminds you of things you may not be quite used to yet, but gets annoying very quickly. Luckily for all our eardrums and our sanity, you can turn him off. There are also neat little details relating to the mainline games as well, like when Noctis performs a summon, his eyes turn the same pink hue as in Final Fantasy XV, and Firion carries every possible weapon to represent the leveling system from Final Fantasy II. One of my personal favourites is when you're playing as Tidus and you summon Rama, and he says, "Show them how tough it is to dodge lightning," which is quite obviously a reference to an infamous bit from Final Fantasy X that was next to impossible. As mentioned earlier, there's also a small amount of customization for your characters, in that you can unlock new outfits and weapon skins for them. It's very superficial and doesn't really add anything to the gameplay, but it's a nice bit of fan service nonetheless, and serves as a good way of extending gameplay time for you completionists out there. In fact, on the whole, the fan service in this game is plentiful, and it seems like a game aimed more at die-hard fans of the series than outsiders and casual fighting game fans, although it is an interesting take on the genre. Overall, this game is a fun time with solid gameplay and fun mechanics. The fan service is spot on, and it does feel like a good addition to the series, a very natural evolution of the PSP games. It's not without its flaws, however. Progression is slow in terms of leveling up and moving the story forward, and it's not the most welcoming to newcomers interested in the series. Like the Avengers, a lot of the appeal of Dissidia is seeing your favourite characters interact with and play off each other, so the Memoria system feels like an unnecessary hindrance to get to that. If you can get past these issues though, the game is well worth your time, and is filled to the brim with things to do and items to unlock. At the time of writing, the servers haven't been live, so I can't comment on the online gameplay, although from the betas I played I had no lag issues whatsoever, and it didn't feel much different to offline gameplay, aside from actually having competent allies. The little details really make this game shine, and all in all I'd say Dissidia NT is a great game if you're a fan of the franchise. If you're more casually interested though, maybe wait for a sale or something to see if it's your sort of thing, as it isn't the most accessible game I've ever played. At any rate, thanks for watching. Leave a like and even subscribe if you want to see more content like this. What are your thoughts on the game? Have you played it and disagree or agree wholeheartedly with me on something? Leave a comment below to let me know. And again, thanks for watching. See you next time.